All right, 9 o'clock. We are on, waiting for Gary and James. Let's see what's going on. There is the link. Got a few people here, just waiting for Gary. James is, I think, on his way home, so he'll be joining us shortly. So, any questions you have on generators, electrical, anything with small engine electrical generators, things like that, Gary should be out shortly. Gary Ross is there. Hello, Gary Ross. So we're just waiting for Gary Bernacki to show up. I know he's there somewhere, but posted the link again, Gary, if you need it. And then we'll go from there. Generally, James works in the city, so by the time he gets home, it's usually late, 7:38 ish, whatever. He's got things to do with his family, so that's why we're a little later. Like to go on early for our UK friends and people across the pond because we got a lot of them. Because right now it's 2 o'clock in the morning there in the UK, so I don't know if we'll see any of our friends from the UK. We may see Tom, our friend from Australia, because it's 9 o'clock in the morning where Tom is, so he may chime in. We'll see. But anyhow, let's see. Who else we got here? Wally's there. Hey, Wally, how you doing? Let's see. And there's Randy. Hold on, Randy. Give me a second. What's up, Randy?
Oh, not too much. How you been, Ken?
Hanging in. Waiting for some. Well, we had a little bit of cool weather, but now it's supposed to heat up again. So.
Yeah, that's what I did here the last couple of days. It was pretty cool. In fact, like yesterday, I think it was 48 in the morning. Yesterday morning.
Yeah, they say 50.
It was like down to 50 this morning, but it's supposed to be 55 tonight. So
I'll just say next week.
Then back up in the 90s almost, starting tomorrow again.
Well, like I said, fall. We still got another 3 weeks, so
yeah, that's what I heard.
I wonder if Gary's having technical difficulties. We'll see.
I don't know. I figured I'd jump on tonight because I've never met James Condon in person yet. I've never actually.
Yeah, he had a little errand to run. He should be here another maybe 15 minutes or so. We'll see. Oh, who is that? Somebody's there. Oh. Who is that? I think it's my friend Robert from Georgia, I think is in the basement.
Uh-huh.
I think it's Robert. It just says it's called 911. So we'll see. So we got Gary. Oh, Gary actually is from across the pond. So thanks for staying up, Gary. Let's see. Yeah, well, hopefully they'll be there shortly. AVR. Well, hopefully he'll be able to answer the question, Justin. He'll be here shortly. Gary will be here. Let me see. Is that Robert? Is that you? It looks like that you, Robert. Hey, there he is. What's going to happen is I'll probably once Gary and James get on, we'll have a little conversation. Then I'll put them two on, and they can start answering everybody's questions. But I know those who watch James know that he just bought a used load bank.
Yeah, I seen that yesterday.
Yeah, he doesn't have to keep using his space heaters and all that stuff. And I know Gary built his own from some ceiling heaters, I think it is, he told me. So we'll see what's going on.
That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, cheaper, he said. A little cheaper. We got Schuster's here. Hello, everybody. Jeff is here. Hi, Jeff. Northern Ireland for Gary. Hope the weather, well, it's 2 in the morning, so it's probably cool out there now, Gary. But, yeah. So we'll see. Where's Gary? He texted me. I know he's around. He was setting up a few minutes ago. So let's see what's going on. I texted Tom out in Australia, see if he's going to join us. And that's good. Yeah, James, good friend. And like I said, we help each other out all the time. Hopefully he'll be here shortly. and you can answer some questions.
Yeah,
Minnesota.
I've been watching that video that he rode on your Harley. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, he told me he never drove one. I said, go ahead, have fun. Lee Harris, Land of 1,000 Lakes, Minnesota. Good afternoon or good evening, where it is where you are. Jeff is here. Oh, tech question for me. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to answer it, Jeff. Lancaster. Hey, I love Lancaster. I used to do a lot of vacationing out there. I love the Amish. I love trains. The great Pennsylvania Railroad Museum out there is phenomenal if you're into trains. So
yeah, I'm in PA too, Ken.
A nice place to be. Nice place. Oh, let's see who's in the basement now. Oh, there he is. Gary.
Hey.
Hey, Gary.
What's going on?
How are you?
There's Randy, Mr. HVAC there, and our friend from Georgia down the bottom, Robert. He's always on some of the streams, but what's going on, Gare?
Nothing much. Just hanging out. We were just cleaning up the house a bit, and because as you know, the house has been upside down for almost a month, so we're finally going to be able to put the floors back together.
Hey, how'd your gig go this weekend?
It went really good. So we played Lone Oak. Up the camping grounds in northern Connecticut in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was 3 sets, 4 hours, pretty long, but thankfully I didn't get sunburned, and there was hornet's nest or wasp nest up on where this stage was. And my guitar player and we were trying to like dodge them. So it looked like we had agita, but it's not. We were just trying to not get stung. But my amazing wife packed some bug spray and some sun, and it's also like a sunscreen, so I was pretty much okay.
There you go. How did you remember all your music or what?
I did, yeah. No, I had
yeah, but let me ask you though, if you're playing, do you ever not know it 100% and just flub a little bit and nobody knows that you're doing it?
Yeah, if the idea is that, and again, a lot of bands do this, like if you miss a note or if you're you forget what's the change, as long as the rest of the instruments are kind of playing, you don't really notice it because everyone's kind of focused on the singer most of the time. But you try not to do that. That's what we have rehearsals for.
One thing I don't like about like cover bands and copy bands sometimes is the way they end some songs. Some songs, if you have like a fade out or something like that, some bands just like to end with or something. And I guess every band has their own signature on how they end certain songs,
Yeah, well, there's everyone's got the interpretation of what the song should be, and the fade out is actually kind of an old trick. No, you don't hear that anymore. It's all 80s music, or even like earlier on.
Well, you were saying like Fleetwood Mac, a lot of theirs is fade out.
Fade out, yeah.
And that too, Ken. What bugs me? You get a cover band and they want to play in the same song every set of music that they play. They'll go on break. They'll play one song, set of songs, go on break. When they play the next set, the same song comes out.
Yeah,
that's not too popular, I guess.
No, it's not popular at all. I mean, in any cover band too, and I struggle with this too. I mean, I've been in a bunch of bands over the years, but you learn about 50, 65 songs, and there's your 3 sets pretty much, sometimes 4 sets, but you have to change it up. You have to keep it interesting because the people that come out to see you all the time, they don't want to hear the same sets. They don't want to hear the same songs. They want you to, they want you to go and spin it around and change it around. So, but yeah.
Jeff is asking you. I mean, I've restored some threads with JB Weld and things like that. In fact, Permatex, they actually sell a thread restoration compound that you can use. There's all different ways to do it. Sure, you could do that, Jeff. If you don't want to put a helicoil in or something. Sure. Yep.
Justin Van Allen. I'm just reading some of the comments here as I'm eating a jelly bean. I have not. I sent the. He's asking about the AVR that I disassembled for James a while back. No, I sent it back to James, and nothing's really came of it.
How old is that unit? Like a 500, 600? We talking like from the 70s, 80s?
Yeah, like probably like early 80s. Yeah. For sure.
All right.
No.
But what I
Yeah,
was explaining to Randy before, we were talking about James's new load bank, and you said you made one out of what, ceiling heaters?
Yeah, so it's garage heater. So I have a 7,500 watt
There he is.
ceiling heater. There's the man of the hour. And then I had a 5,000 watt heater, which is kind of what I use for my basement when it gets cold. But I made a sub panel basically, with the double pole 30 breakers and double pole 40s. And I use those two heaters together. Now that gives me 12,500 watts of resistive load that I can go in increments of 1,000 watts at a time. And I have a third plug that's ready to go for another 5,000 watt heater that'll bring me up to my 17.5. And that's the biggest portable generator that I've come across. And for what it's worth, I just don't see that model very often. And the only way that you can pull the full 17.5 is if you use a combination of a 50 amp and a 30 amp.
James, just before we get really started too, Randy wanted to say hello to you and introduce himself. Randy does a lot of HVAC, and you're in where are you, Randy?
Washington, PA.
Oh, so you probably saw that contactor right away and knew what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen one like that before, but it made a lot of sense once I got it powered up. What it did.
I got one of those in my beer brewing system. The 120 volt contactor to run to run a solid state voltage regulator.
I'm looking at Jeff's comment here. Wait, Jeff, maybe I don't understand. You were talking about threads in a carburetor, and you're saying the line coming in is a compression fitting. It's a compression fitting, but you're saying threads, though. You're talking threads on a nut on a compression fitting, or threads on a carburetor, like pipe threads, where you would screw in a compression fitting. Just clarify, Jeff. Maybe I'm not thinking the right thing. All right. Wally, I think Wally's from your channel, right, Gare? Is it from your channel?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. But
we did.
You talk about your load bank and everything, Gare, but I'll be honest, James is a little more sexier with that.
It is, and for me, he tests way more generators than I probably ever will.
Yeah.
But at least I have a way to load up even some of the bigger machines, because most of the time I'm seeing up to 8,000 watts most of the time for these machines, or less.
Yeah.
On a rare occasion that you find a 10,000 or a 12,000 or that 15 or 17.5, that's like unobtainium, because who's going to want to, every time the power goes out, who wants to lug a 550-pound generator rolling it out to your inlet box? No one's going to want to do that. At that point, you might as well get a home standby unit. I've just joined a group on Facebook, and there's a lot of great information on there, but they seem to be Duramax and Westinghouse fans on there, and they are going for the dual fuel 12,000 and 15,000. I'm like, do you guys do you have that kind of muscle to be able to move those things around? I would think those are more stationary than anything.
Yeah,
that's like my cousin.
Sorry, go ahead.
They live in Greene County, which is a half hour from me. They got a Kohler whole house generator.
Yeah.
First time I heard it fire up, I'm like, whoa, that thing's a little loud.
Yeah, I mean, if it's inside most of the Generac air cooled 20,000 kilowatts, 20,000 watts or 20 kilowatts on propane, or 18,000 on natural gas, it's got a 27 or a 30 horsepower V twin, and that thing is damn loud, even with the enclosure on it.
Oh yeah. Oh, James, before I forget, I was watching your channel, that one video of those ETQ generators that wouldn't make power.
Yeah.
That's actually the exact model generator that I have that I could not get running. That same model is the exact one.
Was it the engine or no power?
It's the engine.
Interesting. Usually the engines, I shouldn't say they don't fail. I mean, they certainly do, but the power heads are built so cheaply on a lot of the clones that the power heads fail way before the engines do, unless it ran out of oil or was full of water or something.
Yeah. They're usually made, the cheaper power heads are made of aluminum or copper-clad aluminum wiring now. They don't even seal them in lacquer or anything like that. It's terrible.
I think a lot of them, it's rare. I mean, unless you're going to spend like 2,000 plus, I think a lot of the cheaper ones are like that. Although I have seen, I think it's Duramax has advertised quite a bit that they have all copper.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they do or not, They probably do, but
They seem to, because a lot of their bigger machines, if it's not an open frame inverter generator, they have the standard or the conventional type of generator power head, but it's got the damping winding on there. That's what gives you the lower total harmonic distortion for a conventional generator.
You were getting really good THD with that last generator, James.
That's because of that damping winding.
Yeah.
It looks like a squirrel cage,
right? That was a 10,000 generator? Yeah.
Yep. Wow. Is it
though?
Yeah.
Because
exactly
like so far I've noticed all the V twins I've tested test well. So I thought it was more to do with the cavitation of the single cylinder engine. The two-stroke 2 was very low, but that's kind of like a twin, like a 4-stroke twin, because every stroke's a power stroke. So I don't know if it was because it was copper, because the engine runs smoother, more power strokes, or if it's something else.
Now, when you ran that, you were averaging what, about 4%, I think it was?
For the one I did. Yeah,
now,
just did.
Would that last, or would it degrade over time with something wearing or wearing out?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe if the brushes were getting dirty, you could see some noise. But I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. It either works or it doesn't. And those machines too, they're a mess. I'm sure Gary's had one open before, but it's
I just hate the way the covers and everything. I can't stand those.
They're a pain to work on, but if you ever open up the electrical side, it's like spaghetti. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The wiring and what they've done.
The worst though has to be the one I brought to Gary, and we opened up the electrical panel. I've never seen one destroyed as bad as that.
Well, the mice.
Which one was that?
Oh,
it was
mice?
It was a Furman. It was a Furman.
Yeah, Furman dual fuel.
Oh yeah.
And you know, it could have. We probably could have saved it, but it just would have not made dollars and cents wise. And the thing with mice in general, all of the insulation on a lot of these electrical devices these days, the insulation is not made of plastic. It's actually soy based. So they're going to be attracted to the insulation and just eat the insulation away. They'll put a plastic sleeve over it to get that class F insulation, which is, you know, for heat insulation basically. But once they chew through that, they're going to make their nest out of anything.
I wonder if Honda, because I know in their cars they use that sour tape or whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if they do that in any of their generators or power equipment to keep varmints. Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Oh, James, I looked up that low bank thing you had.
We're looking at your ceiling fan, Robert. Where's your face? There you go.
But they even had one that was digital readout. I'm like, I wonder which one he likes, the analog or the digital readout.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like the look of the analog, but in practice, it's a pain because
not really.
Actually, you're going to see next week why it's a pain because, first of all, there's no watt meter. So that's an issue.
Wait, is this a spoiler alert, James? Spoiler?
No, but the needle, like on the voltmeter, for example, one tick, very close together. It's a difference of 5 volts.
Yeah. Were you able to adjust that on your new gadget? You said they're off a little.
I haven't tried yet. I've been looking at a bunch of digital gauges. Oh, okay. There's actually a spot for a 4th gauge on there. Mm-hmm. And what I ideally would do is just put a 4th gauge there that's digital that has watts or all 4, watts, amps, volts.
Is that a name brand we'd recognize, Jim? I don't think of it offhand. Who made that load bank? Is it something we'd recognize?
Simplex.
Okay, all right. I know Simplex is pretty big as far as doing different things, but I wonder if it's the same company. Huh.
Yeah, I think they're known for load banks. I mean, I had no intention of buying one. I actually kind of like the space heaters, but it does become a pain. A subscriber sent me the link. It was some guy in Long Island selling it.
This is the one that I have on my home brewing setup. This is it. It shows you watts. It shows you voltage. It shows you
that's nice.
Amperage. And I have it set up for 120, but you can set it up for 240 very easily.
What is it? Surface mount or what is it?
No, it's right. You just cut a hole in it. I made it as simple as possible. There, you can probably see a little better here. That's just my little controller that I made for brewing beer. but you got the master switch. I got the voltage regulator, adjustment potentiometer, and an indicator light. Just made it very, very straightforward, simplistic. But that I'll send you the link, James. That might actually
Yeah.
be the ticket that you need. Well, it has everything that you can need for testing generators there.
Yeah, send me the link. I want something that shows up well in the daylight, which I know pretty much
That won't do
everything won't.
Hey, I'm gonna Randy and Robert, I'm gonna put you guys down so we can concentrate on these two here, and hopefully we'll start get some generator questions. Appreciate you coming up. Stay in the basement. We'll see what goes on later on.
All right. Actually, I'm going to jump off though, but it was nice to meet you, James.
You too.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Take care. All right. Take care, Ken.
We'll see you on tomorrow's live. All right.
All right. Talk to you then, Ken.
Yep. Robert, hang in the basement, buddy. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right.
All right. Oh, that's too big. Wait a minute. There you go.
Oh, side by side.
So what's new in the world of generators? Anything, guys? Anything going on?
Well, all I can say is they're not selling right now. So
the market is in
the weather's coming. Yeah, the weather's coming. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see. I have a lot of videos, non-generator videos that are summer equipment that I need to get out. So you're going to see a bunch of those probably into October. And then hopefully I'll move a few generators because right now nothing is selling.
Even if I listed
on the generator front, I fixed a lawnmower. It was gone the same day, and I'm like, man, I got to switch what I'm fixing here. Much easier to sell.
Oh, interesting.
In good weather.
It stinks. I mean, you and I we're all fairly close to each other geographically speaking, but until a hurricane makes its way up the East Coast, we don't have any urgency for people buying generators at this point. It's just tough.
Justin's talking about fuel injection on the EU 3200
first generation. Well, so the fuel injection, at least from what I've seen, they started on the snowblowers first. They, like Aaron's, came out with a single cylinder but with a port injected EFI system, and it's actually not. They've been around for a while, and some of the problems that Aaron's ran into, from what I found, was the onboard battery pack is, one, expensive to replace, and two, it doesn't have a very long life. So when it does die, it causes problems with the module. But I've heard good things as far as reliability outside of that. Now, if generators start going to that too, I just don't see people wanting to have to deal with that extra complexity. What are you going to get? Yeah, you won't have the fuel problems as much. I mean, it's going to be a lot harder for a fuel injector to necessarily get clogged than versus a carburetor. But the reality is that what's the upcharge for something like that? I just don't think it's going to sell. I think they're going to be better off just keeping with the carbureted engines and maybe going more open frame inverters, since a lot of people don't want the conventional generators that have high THD. It's too costly to make a power head with the damping winding to keep that THD low. So the next best thing is to get an inverter, which is far more efficient, far less costly to make. And you're paying a higher premium for a nice quiet generator like a Honda or a Yamaha, but an open frame inverter will pretty much, you don't have to worry about any kind of dirty power or bad dirty electricity ruining your expensive furnace, for example.
Yeah, I think too, it's the complexity. I don't want to say it. I mean, I use inverters. I love inverters, but when something goes wrong, it's a big deal. Either you can't get the part's way too expensive.
Yep.
And then there's really no chance of it being fixed. Like the video you did recently, Gary, with the propane regulator problem, that is an example too. Like, people buy that because of reliability. They don't have to worry about it. It should last a long time.
Right.
But when it goes bad, it's like $200 or $300 to fix the problem. Whereas if you have something that runs on gas, you can just buy an extra carb for $15 and stick it on the shelf.
True. I mean, and in all honesty, I mean, I've seen those. So we're talking, if you guys haven't watched my channel on that, what we're talking, because you actually had the first video. So give yourself the credit there. You did the LP 3250 Generac. Now that
Yeah.
came out first, had the same problem. Mine had a little bit more. This LP 5500 was the bigger brother that came out a little bit later. But we're talking about 10 years ago. These are dedicated propane generators, portable generators. Now, yeah, a $300 demand regulator is absolutely ridiculous. Normally, you can get a diaphragm rebuild kit for like $50 to $65 for most of these things, and that's far more reasonable. But the market has deemed that dedicated propane generators are out. They just doesn't make sense to me. Dual fuel is really making a push in the market. I mean, U.S. Carburation, for example, and I talk about them a lot because I have their kits, but the tri-fuel conversion kit now, since their patent expired, there's a lot of other companies that are kind of copying their design, and Champion and Furman and other companies are coming out with dual fuel out of the box. So it makes it very difficult to justify a conversion kit like that these days.
But what are you saying about the regulator you had trouble getting and all that? Over time, do they degrade where, say, after 5 years, you're going to need another one? Or what's the issue?
The mercaptan, that is the odorant, because propane is odorless. The mercaptan is a chemical that actually that's what actually propane smells like, but you're not smelling propane, you're smelling the mercaptan. It's not that caustic because they have EPDM type rubbers that are meant to handle gaseous fuels, so they're not going to break down that much. But again, things do wear out. It's a wearable item. It's just like a needle and seat on a carburetor, for example. It's going to eventually leak. It's going to eventually cause problems. Why they wouldn't go and make it more accessible to get an affordable part? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I know Furman and Champion. Furman's in Arizona, Champion's in California. You can buy a brand new propane demand regulator from them for under $100 for a lot of their units. It makes perfect dollars and cents. They're not overpricing it. They want to keep these generators in the market because they figure that, with the flexibility of dual fuel, people are going to need them and use them.
I'll tell you one thing, though. I will never touch a Furman again after all that. Not just because of what there was, but because of what I found out about the issues with that bandwidth sensor and all the other stuff. I mean, what a nightmare.
Don't be afraid of that.
You said they corrected it, right?
They did correct it. I've talked with the engineer that
why don't you explain what that issue was for those that don't know on the stream? I had a Furman and it didn't have that particular one. There were two things. There was the carbon monoxide detector thing was one. I didn't have it on mine, but then a bandwidth that would kick it out. Explain to the people out there what we're talking about.
So there is a sensor where it is looking at the AC output, right? And it's actually sensing the speed. It's VF. It's called the VFO sensor. So it stands for Variable Frequency Oscillator, and forget the fancy name. All it's doing is sensing the speed of the engine, and if it falls out of a certain range, so if it's above 63 hertz or below 58 hertz, the generator shuts off. That's all it does.
And it's based on time, right?
No, it's based on the zero.
Well, but how often is it cycling? Like if it senses it for, say, 3 or 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 1 second, what is it?
It's
got to have a sampling rate, right? Or sampling time.
It's not a digital component. It's a passive, so it's probably got a capacitor in there. It's probably not going to be for more than a half a second or 1 to 2 seconds. But
that would suck.
It would stink because and again, it's trying to keep the frequency in the right range for most stuff to run.
It's nice that it actually has that feature. It's kind of it's more difficult to troubleshoot, but it's nice that they're doing that because a lot of portable generators have no safeties except the oil sensor.
Right.
A lot of them don't check what the voltage is. They don't check what the hertz are at. And I've seen plenty where it's running at 170 volts on the 120, and it's running happily. It doesn't shut down. People use it. They have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, James, when it runs on 170, like you said, is that going to create too much amperage? Are you going to have a problem?
No, it's going to be lower amperage because it's inversely proportional to voltage. But he has NEC spec in the United States based on the most recent versions, anything from 105 volts all the way up to 132 volts. It's a very wide range for most households run at anywhere from 115 to 124 volts. That's where they like to be.
But he said 170 instead of 240, right? If it's
running at 170 on the half winding. So on the 100.
Oh, okay, I got
on
you.
120 volt outlets.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So
I thought it was on the 240.
What he's referring to is, so what happens is that a lot of these and a lot of the older Generacs have a 2-board system. One board is controlling the voltage regulator board and the N bell. So the N bell power regulator board, they call it, is if it didn't have a negative feedback, snubber feedback, that 3-pin cable, it's going to output the full power to the rotor that's spinning, and that's where you're going to get your 170 volts, close to 300 volts on the 240 volt side. So it's relying on that second board to read the output voltage and use a feedback loop, it's called, to regulate that voltage. And a lot of times when those fail, it's usually just a transistor or a simple 30-cent, capacitor, and it spikes and goes up to 170 volts. Now, most of that's the older generation. That generator's got to be 15, 18 years old by now. The newer machines, the conventional generators, they have that speed sensor, and they're also putting in voltage sensors too. So if it falls outside a certain voltage, or if it spikes too much or sags below, it's going to shut the machine down, which I'm grateful for that too, because it's less likely for stuff to burn up in your house if it's connected to it. Granted, it's a lot more complex with the board controls to troubleshoot a lot of that. And I hear a lot of people trying to bypass their carbon monoxide sensors because you can't. Well, first, you can't bypass many of them, especially on the inverters. On the conventional ones, you can, but
but you won't tell
me.
You
on the inverter? What's the difference?
The inverter is actually sensing again, I don't want to get too technical, but if you have an inverter generator with a carbon monoxide sensor, if you bypass that board, the entire generator will not work.
Oh, okay.
It is designed to be a fail-safe. It needs to run with the CO sensor in place, because if it doesn't receive a square wave signal going back to the inverter, eventually it'll just shut down the inverter and shut down the engine. It's going to do two things at once.
Anyone want to answer that question?
What do you guys do for a living? Oh, okay. I am a logistics analyst for the restaurant industry. So anything from McDonald's, Dairy Queen, Tropical Smoothie, any kind of major fast food restaurant, I'm likely shipping all the computer systems that run those restaurants. So I'm constantly looking at the P&L for that. So that's my day job.
Yeah, my day job, I am a manager of an IT department, actually in New York City, and I'm also a programmer and a database administrator.
And I work for the largest defense contractor in the world, Lockheed Martin, and I fix and repair machines and machine tools. So a little bit of a variable there.
Yeah, that's the small engine for me is always going to be part-time for me. I just can't see ever doing it full-time. Maybe it's been more of a power hobby, but I've been able to monetize it. I enjoy it, but there's times where it can take up so much of your free time too when you're trying to diagnose these problems. So
yeah, what do you charge and all that?
Exactly.
Yeah, Justin, I think you have the market on vintage generators, but yeah, it takes a special person to want to collect generators. But
yeah, how many? What do you do with them?
they're it's a piece. It's a like the EM 500, the EX 1000. Like some of these ones built in the 60s, 70s, 80s, fantastic quality. You would never.
Wait, Justin isn't
like
the guy that has one of every one, is it? Of the Honda, is that him?
He probably does.
Because I know there was somebody out there. I heard one time you talking, James. He was looking to get one of every single Honda ever made in the generator.
Yeah, if this is the Justin, I think it is. He's looking to get the first Honda generator.
Well, you had what was the one you had, James? That real old one from like 70 or something.
Yeah. What was that? An E400?
Something, yeah, real tiny. Yeah.
The little green one?
Yep. I tell you, though, my best video of yours so far still to this day is when you resurrected the home light, though. That gas tank. I never would have thought that you would have gotten that gas tank.
Oh,
you did.
The green one. The one I just did?
I would have
Yeah.
thrown it out. I would have. I mean, you persevered, and that thing looked like brand new inside. Yeah.
Close to brand new.
Yeah.
It's still clogged up, but
It
you know,
ran
we're
great.
close.
Yeah, it
It
ran
ran good. I remember that video.
And that carburetor.
It
I mean,
did.
who would have thought that the technology and then it's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. It's a good
And you said what,
simple design.
1950 maybe? Is that what it was? Roughly?
60s, I
Oh, 60.
believe.
Okay.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Maybe 50.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was 50s actually. 54, 55.
Because that was what, like a green hammer tone finish on it?
Yep.
Nice. Uh-oh, what's this here? Remote.
You have an electric remote inverter. Okay, yep. Trying to find a remote fob to work. Okay, that's one of those suitcase generators, if I'm not mistaken. What's the number? 56480.
Gary's gonna find the manual.
Well, when is
Well,
another?
who owns them now?
I don't know who owns them, but I know I've worked with their. I did have a Wen generator a few months back, and I needed to get a part, and they were really cool about it. I don't. If the machine is not in warranty, give them the call. I could see if I could find the part number real quick for you, but I know that they can send that out to you if you need it. But then it comes down to pairing it with the inverter, which I think there is a procedure to do that. Because
Is that the same Wen that makes like toolboxes and other stuff like that? Is it all the same company?
I think so.
Because Wen, it's almost like they're getting like Vivor. You know, they basically make a lot of stuff. You know. Hey, Pat.
There it
Well,
is.
they don't make any of it. They put their name on it.
Nobody makes anything. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a nice machine he's got. Oh, it's a 3-year warranty. So I don't know if you is it less than 3 years old?
Let's see.
We got the because it's parallel capable. All right.
Rob, we got Connecticut for me, New York for James, and Connecticut for Gary.
Here's the link to the manual. But from what I can see, yeah, they give you the phone. Give them a call. I've heard good things with their tech support. There's even an email right on the first page. But
just got a good question.
Remote start on a generator, you'd be surprised how many people like to have that ability. The remote.
Well, if it's pouring rain out, it's 3 a.m, the power goes out. I'm not going to want to go outside and pull a cord.
Exactly.
True. I've seen a lot of remote start generators that don't have an auto choke.
Yeah, there's a stepper motor on the choke plate.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Hey, Gary, do you need choke on a propane or no? Any kind of choking?
You need a primer. You need when you have a remote start for a propane or a dual fuel, there's 2 solenoids. There's one solenoid to move the choke plate on the carburetor, and there's also a solenoid to prime the propane regulator to squirt some propane and purge the airline, purge the air out of the line, basically. And fuel cap, wiring harness, control panel assembly.
So, James, you can answer this one. What was your most difficult gen set to repair?
Oh God, I don't know if there's a single one. There's a few though that come to mind, and some of them are the earlier ones too. Like it was a rigid I picked up years ago. It was in terrible condition, and it wouldn't run, and it ended up just being a timing issue. And when I finally got it running, it had no power. So it was a battle. I think the 10,000 EXL was a good one too. It had lots of interesting problems to kind of work through. So there's been a lot of them where it's just like, it's unbelievable the condition the machine's in. Like it's a good machine, but someone just messed it up so bad that it's not just one problem. It's many kind of coming together and making it difficult.
Well, I know now you've been getting more into the engine stuff too, James. And I know, I forget which engine it was where it was actually off a tooth. And it's like, did that come from the factory?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that was the Briggs flathead.
Yeah, you had a lot of problems with that one.
How about you, Garrett? Difficult repair? Any gen?
Oh, Tecumseh. I still haven't done part 2 on that.
We got to work on that. I know.
You know what happened? Another one showed up just like it.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
Another 10 horse, or?
Yeah, I think it's the same engine. So it'd be
wow.
interesting to see how that one runs.
Yeah, usually you see them on the Colemans, the reds and the green ones. You know?
Yeah, it's a Coleman.
Yeah.
I got the answer for him. Okay, here's your part number. So the remote start, you are not going to be able to get the remote by itself. It's going to be there's an actual remote module that comes with the remote itself, the fob, if you will. So that's the part number. Give them the model and serial number. Give them a call or send them an email. But I believe that is the part number you need. Boom.
All right, thank you, sir. What's the other question? That's a good question.
I don't know if we're really qualified to answer
I mean,
that.
none of us have an E1, so
No, but I mean, I'll spitball on that one if you don't mind. I mean, he's asking, when do you hook up a grounding rod to a portable generator? Well, that's going to depend on how you have it hooked up to your house. So most of the time, people are going to connect to their house via an interlock.
Gary, let me interrupt you real quick. Does the word bonded have to do anything with that question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So where I'm going with this, so typically the most common setup that I see, it's not you have a transfer switch that is a 2-pole, so it's just switching the hots, and then you have an interlock where you have a generator breaker and your main breaker, and you have an interlock bracket that you can't have them both on at the same time. So in a situation like that, they call that a non-separately derived system. So then the generator would not need a grounding rod, but at the generator, the neutral and its earth bonded or earth ground or the frame ground are bonded together either on an outlet or somewhere inside the panel. That bond needs to be broken because the bond at your main panel where your inlet box and your interlock is located already has that bond. If you have two bonds in the system, you're going to get circulating currents between the neutral and the ground, and that is not ideal because it's meant to keep objectionable current off the ground, because potentially during a ground fault, so something grounds out to something in your house grounds out to, I say grounding out, but say it goes to ground, right? It's a ground fault. It's going to split the current between your ground rod that's in your house and also the frame of your generator. So if you just happen to be touching the frame when that happens, you're going to get a shock. In the case of removing that bond at the generator, that generator will not be electrified because now it's going to take the path of least resistance to your ground rod in your house. So that would be the situation where you don't need a ground rod. Now,
would a simple answer be just don't do it, or
you have to see if your generator has a bonded neutral or not. So
and usually they say that on there.
It has to say it for NEC and OSHA spec. But most of the construction site, if not all the construction site generators, are bonded neutral. So they're meant to operate independently out in a field somewhere where a site doesn't have power. You cannot use that with a 2-pole transfer switch or a 2-pole interlock kit because of that objectionable current being on the ground. Now, in the sense, they're the opposite situation where you would need a grounded, an 8-foot ground rod would be when you have a 3-pole transfer switch or a 3-pole interlock where you're actually switching the neutral in those devices, because now it's referred to as a separately derived system, and that generator would need to have its neutral bonded to the frame or bonded to ground, and then that would have to be connected to an NEC approved ground rod. Now
explain switching neutrals though, Gary. What do you mean by that?
So your main panel has a neutral bar and a ground bar. In your main panel, there's a large bonding wire that connects them both, and that's done for safety reasons. If you have a sub panel, for example, neutral bar and the ground bar are separated because you do not want to have more than one bond in the system. What we're talking about now is it's referred to as a separately derived system. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking straight at this. I'm trying to think as I talk about this, but so if you have a 3-pole transfer switch where it disconnects that bonded neutral in your main panel or whatever circuits it's running, and it's expecting that bond back over at the generator. So it's independently switching all 3 main legs in your.
Oh, okay. I got you.
So you want both. Basically, it's 2 independent power sources. You need to have that bond at the generator, and because it breaks the bond in your main panel. So it's got to be bonded somewhere.
Mm.
And most of the time, people don't have. That's the less common version. Even on the standby ones, depending on, unless you have like an inverter solar system, then you have to have even more isolation and issues. I really can't speak to that. But most of the time, it's a non-separately derived system using a 2-pole transfer switch or a 2-pole interlock.
Okay. Question here for James.
Sure. They shake, well, I guess first off, they don't have a counterbalancer on it, so they're going to shake more than, say, like a Honda or a Honda clone or even a Yamaha. A lot of engines do have the third, the counterbalance weight in it to help it run smoother. So, yeah, when running slow, shutting down, they're going to shake more, but they actually run pretty smooth when they're running. That balancer, I'd say, isn't critical.
I see it more on the verticals than the horizontals too. That balancer.
Yeah. I
They're
know.
a point of failure too. I mean,
yeah, they can be, especially if they're not put back in the right way. But I mean,
Yeah.
I have an older Colder Command CB15 on my John Deere, and it's got the balance shaft. Man, for a single cylinder, it actually runs very smooth. But I have seen that too on the Briggs and Stratton ones, the storm responders. Yeah, they shake, but once they get up to a certain speed, then those harmonic forces are basically canceling each other out at that point with the counterweight on the crankshaft.
Yep. So as far as the Briggs blowing up, it, for whatever reason, especially on a generator,
Nobody checks the oil ever.
they don't check the oil. And generators, you can really rack up the hours quickly on it, and people just don't realize that. I mean, you could take your lawnmower, use it every week during the summer, and have less than 50 hours on it, and you'll probably be fine if you don't check the oil. A generator, if you lose power for a week and you run it for a week,
right,
you've just put hundreds of hours on it,
Yep.
and the oil tends to disappear quickly. The other thing with the Briggs too is that they actually have a piece of plastic that runs from the airbox over the cylinder head, and that recirculates the hot air. That's meant for winter operation, and all those engines come with it installed, and nobody takes them off. So if you're running that thing on a 100-degree day and it's recirculating the hot air, and you have, say, 1030 oil in it, it's going to burn that oil up a lot faster than if you had that shield off or you were running different oil. So it's kind of a combination of factors.
Right.
And the fact that people don't check, there's no oil sensor. At least from 2006 to, I don't know, about 10 years, they got rid of it. And now they have Honda clones on their generators, and those have the sensors. So, it's a shame because I actually really like those engines. And if you check the oil, they're great engines. They're simple. They run well, but you have to have oil or they're gonna blow apart.
Any air-cooled engine is going to have 25 hours is the recommended interval for air-cooled because it's going to run out of hotter temperature. After if it's a brand new generator, you run conventional oil in there for about 5 to 6 hours on moderate to half a load, and then you change the oil. And that's the only thing.
Yeah, you got to break.
Right, because
the oil. How many people do that?
How many people do that? But the right way to break in a new generator is to change out the oil, conventional oil, in the first 5 to 6 hours. Then you put your synthetic oil in there, and you still have to change that oil every 25 to 35 hours typically. And you go beyond 50, now you're asking for trouble because any gasoline power generator, the blow by past the piston as it's running, it's basically poisoning its crankcase. That's what it's doing. All those hydrocarbons, and it's breaking down that oil, and it's running hotter because it's
hotter than your car.
Hotter than your car. It's not liquid cooled. It is going to break down much quicker. So those intervals need to be no more than 25 to 35 hours. But yeah, it's too bad. I mean, low oil sensors, but even on some of the earlier Generacs, they had problems with them. They would they failed in probably the best way possible. They would nuisance trip all the time because the plate inside would get stuck and it would shut down the engine every single time.
Yeah. The ones that really sucked is the ones you had to take the end plate off to replace them.
Yeah, some of them were kind of hard to get to. So there's a difference between low oil sensor, low level oil, and then there's low pressure. There's
Yeah,
two
yeah.
different types of there's
Yep.
pressure and then there's level. Most of the Briggs ones and the Honda clones have a low level, not an oil pressure.
The
'Cause if you want-
Generacs have the pressures now.
Most sub 10,000 watts have just the level.
Just the
You know,
level.
it's rare
I've
to
seen
have
the ones that
pressure.
have the spin-on oil filters, though. A lot of those have the pressure ones.
And those you have to run very level. I mean, that's another thing that kills them. People don't realize it's the splash.
Well, that
fluid.
happened to one of my customers. I thought it was the carburetor, and I look, and he didn't have much oil in there. It's because he had it at about a 15, 20 degree angle.
Yeah. It doesn't take much. And
would run
with an
for-
oil pump, it's a little more forgiving, but still, you want to level that out as much as
more than
possible
5
because
degrees.
yeah, you could still have a decent amount of oil in there, and you put it at the wrong angle.
Oh yeah.
And actually, even with an oil sensor, if you put it at the wrong angle, that oil sensor might still be happy, but there's no oil getting flung around.
Mm.
Now he's asking about this. Does he mean 50 amp plug, or is there a plug called a 50?
Make like 220 wires.
He's trying to make 220 or 240 out of 120, which technically it is. But what are you trying to do?
If you're
You
trying
got to
to
be careful though, because
Uh-oh.
they have to be in sync. I mean, in sync 180 degrees out. You just can't combine two 120s and expect to get 240.
Generically,
take two 12 gauge. He's thinking of taking two 12 gauge 120 volt with a hot neutral and a earth ground. And if he's lucky to find another branch circuit that's 180 degrees on the other phase and then use that for 240.
I mean, how would you even know that?
How would you know exactly? Unless you measure between.
No, but wait. But based on that, let me ask you a question then. If I go into my breaker panel and I put in a dual breaker, one line above the other, and it's 240, right? How do I know it's 180, and how do I?
It's your transformer is center tapped.
Yep.
So and the way your circuit breaker box is that the
forth.
evens are like leg 1, the odds are leg 2.
Okay.
So the double breaker, they're right next to each other for a reason because you're guaranteed to have different legs, which are 180 degrees out.
All right, didn't know that.
I had someone from the UK ask me about that too because he couldn't wrap his head around why we needed 2 wires for 240 volts and the neutral, whereas they just send it all on 1 wire.
Yeah, they're 400 or 4.
Yeah, they don't have a center tap on their primaries. So
correct, but if they put a center tap transformer, then they'd have 120 volts, 50 hertz.
Yeah.
You know.
Interesting. Oh, let's see.
Yep, portable generators need to be grounded unless you're insulated tools that are not grounded. Right. So that's going back to the ground rod question.
Yeah.
When to put a ground rod. If you
So
have
that's a good question though. I mean, I'm not qualified to answer this, so don't listen to anything I have to say. But if
either.
you have a bonded generator and you have a short.
Wait, hold on, James. Just hold on. This is for entertainment purposes only. Okay.
All my videos are listed as entertainment only. So
there you go.
Take that.
Yep.
I don't want lawyers calling us up. Okay.
If you have a bonded generator and a live hits the frame, it will trip the circuit breaker. Yep. If you have a floating generator, so floating neutral and the live hits the frame is live, no circuit breaker trips.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, when you need a grounding rod, I don't know, but you definitely want to have it bonded if you're running it as a portable generator.
Correct.
So that the breaker trips if something shorts out to the frame.
I don't think that matters what he's asking here, just because it's.
Does your generator has to be? Well, you not only need you have an 8-foot ground rod here. I mean, and we're talking in the United States here. So an NEC ground rod is 8 feet. That's going to go to your main panel. And if you have a home standby generator or an automatic standby generator, yes, they are going to still, most townships and cities will require that a separate ground rod be installed next to the generator. Now, even the home standby, depending on your setup, may not have they don't have an internal bonding with the neutral and ground. That's usually done through the generator panel, or it could be done at the main panel. So it really kind of depends on your setup. So it's not one size that fits all.
Yeah. Let me ask you this though, Gary. Like if you ground the generator and you touch a live wire while you're standing on the ground, you'll probably die, right? But if you don't ground the generator and you touch a live wire, just a live wire,
Because you're not
it would
grounded.
seem a lot safer.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's you could
Well, it's
still,
just like the linemen up on the pole if they don't touch Earth, right?
Right.
well, yeah, they're insulated. It doesn't have a return path for the current, but you still are creating a very dangerous situation. And the 7.62 by 51, he brings up a good point. And again, this is not my area of expertise, so
Nor mine.
I default to the people who have more experience in this. But he's saying that don't put a ground rod on your generator, creates a difference in potential between the two ground rods, so one at your main panel and one at your generator. So the distance between the two ground rods, the more of a distance, the more of a potential that can potentially get. Well, sorry,
You're saying if it's double grounded?
well, again, if there
You're
should
talking
only
a potential charge in between.
could be a potential charge, but only I don't know how that would actually work. There's another guy that's on YouTube. We should probably get him. He's done this. He's done exactly what this
He's
guy
measured the potential.
He's measured the potential. He hammered two ground rods into the ground,
Yeah.
and he created a live wire to ground fault, and he measured the potential difference from that live to the other ground rod.
Wow.
And when he was right next to the ground rod, when he just stuck his meter probe into the ground, there wasn't that much of a voltage difference. The further away he got, the more the voltage went up, and it's like, yep, yeah, that doesn't sound very good.
Interesting.
Open frame inverters, yeah, because it's a metal frame. Most of the closed frame, your suitcase generators are all surrounded by plastic most of the time. So those are floating neutral. The Yamaha EF2000 IS is a floating neutral.
Interesting. I always wondered why. Inverters are almost always floating.
Yep, because there's no outside metal to touch, with the exception of that ground lug.
Okay, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, James, I could answer this one. If you want to take it.
Yeah, we talked about this the last go.
Yeah, I'll answer it, but you'll probably answer it better. First, it would be cheaper to buy an inverter generator.
Thank you.
There are ways to clean power.
What are those filters called?
Oh God, I don't know, but I thought it was like a toroidal transformer that they use on a commercial setting to clean power. But there are devices like that where you can clean the power, but the cost to them is ridiculous.
And physical size.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that, oh, can I run it through a surge protector or a UPS? And the answer is no. And a lot of UPSs are actually square wave as well, which people don't know.
The old ones are.
The old ones are. I have a name brand professional UPS square wave. It's like $1,000 UPS. And I was like, really? Square wave? But it's old.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are things that can clean it up, but nothing that's going to cost less than buying an inverter.
Exactly. So the device that you're referring to clean up total harmonic distortion or dirty power is called a line or a load reactor. It's basically a very large inductor or a large ferrite choke with a wire wrapped around it.
Yeah.
And there's usually a capacitor on there. So you're creating a capacitor, an inductor, a low pass filter, basically. So it's cutting out all those higher harmonics that makes dirty power. In the portable generator world, to do that, it's just not practical cost wise. It just doesn't make sense. It is, I won't say that it's completely impossible of what he's saying, because there are UPS and uninterruptible power supplies that are able to accept dirty power coming in, because all they're doing is rectifying it and charging the onboard batteries, depending on the topology. And then it's basically all the loads that you have plugged into your UPS are always running off of the inverter. They have other topologies where the old square wave,
the UPS inverter,
where it's a relay where it clicks over within a few microseconds, but basically you're running on it's passing the power through until the power is lost on the incoming side. The most common ones that you find on Amazon and everything are what are called line interactive, meaning they have an incoming wall power. It'll pass that right through to the outlets. But in the event that your power or your voltage is too high or too low, they have a heavy transformer. It's called an autoformer, where it's got a different set of taps where you'll hear relays clicking. And if the voltage is too low, it'll step it back up. If the voltage is too high, it'll step it back down. And if it's outside of that range that it cannot adjust, then it will switch over to the battery, running either a pure sine wave or a square wave or a modified sine wave. And those do not do well with dirty power at all, because they're constantly switching back and forth between battery and the line input power. If you're going to use any UPS, you need what is called a double conversion or an online. Basically, that is the incoming power is just to power a battery charger. Now, these battery chargers that are built into them are far more robust. They have what is called they do have that large inductor and capacitor in there. It's what's called passive power factor correction. You don't need to know what that is. Just know that the components in there are built more robust to handle dirty power, because it doesn't care. It's meant to handle a very wide range of input voltage and frequency. They don't care about the harmonics that are from total harmonic distortion, because all the loads are running on that pure sine wave inverter built into it as it is. That's where they're the most expensive. Right, so it is possible. So it is possible. It's just not cost effective. It's cool if you want to do a project like that, but not cost effective.
Hey, Gary, just a quick question, because I know people have asked me about it to ask you in the past.
Oh,
where did you learn electronics? Just general electronics and things like this. Where'd you actually learn it? Just doing
research.
Yeah,
passion.
No college, no tech school.
No.
Okay.
I did a lot of trial and error. I've gotten shocked before. I'm genuinely interested in electronics as a hobby, and I have I've been exposed to a lot of different people in the electronics industry. So
speaking of electronics, let me show you something. It'll take a minute.
Let me go through some of these comments real quick. What is this tent he's talking about, Genset tent?
Though I've looked into this. So basically, it's a tent that goes over the generator, sits on top of the frame, so that as the rain falls, it doesn't fall on the generator.
Oh, okay.
Those are nice. They're kind of worthless if you have rain coming sideways. So, but I guess if you don't have a lot of wind, they're worth it. But I guess, I mean, I like to have one, but I can't really justify the cost here. But
the tents are great. A great idea. I think the big thing that I object to are the little enclosures that people put their generators in.
Oh, well, they don't get any air.
And they actually run it. An air-cooled engine and an enclosure is a bad recipe. And also just the generator head too. It needs to stay cool. It needs to breathe. But having a roof over it, I think, is a great idea, especially if it's wet out.
Dave, your question here, in a couple of years, I'm going to sell it to him. So don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not going to. I don't trust the other people on the road. But you might appreciate that, Gary.
What is it? Looks like a breadboard.
That is an AVR for a Honda EM500 built from scratch.
Who's doing that?
I built it, but someone else designed it.
Wow.
And it works.
Gary, I thought you did one for him. Didn't you do one?
I tried breaking it apart, but I started breaking it more so than actually trying to reverse engineer it. That must have taken a lot of time. That's the thing.
It took a lot of time. The guy that did it, he's retired. He spent a lot of time on it. Very knowledgeable guy. And I actually built two of them. This is the first one. I don't build boards normally, so this one's really.
Well, would that even fit in that unit? I mean, it looks pretty.
Oh no! It's just a prototype to see if it could control it. And
so you gotta miniaturize it once you get it down to.
That's cool.
Yeah. So there'll be a video on that.
You got way more time than me.
What's he saying? Did NEC said you don't have to ground it if it's connected to your house?
I can't comment on it. You would know better than me.
Let's see. Ben Solstrom. Who's that?
No idea.
Yeah. Oh, maybe the other guy who did the video on the potential between the grounding rods.
Maybe I don't remember the guy's name.
Okay. Let's see. Double convert.
Yeah, that'll clean it up. But
Yep.
you're losing power, and it costs money to buy that device.
Yeah, and those things are only meant to be using. You can't run them at full load because they are not. They have internal fans, and unless you buy a sufficiently sized, you can't really run those inverters at full power for too long because they're only what those UPSs are really designed for is just to give you enough time to power down your equipment properly.
Yep.
You can't run them as 100% constant duty during an output during an outage like
Correct.
that. I mean, you can. It wasn't designed for that. Just so you know, it's a lot of these, unless they're overly built for them, and those are the more expensive units. You get a little tower unit, like I have one running my computer now. I wouldn't trust it to run for more than a few hours on a slight load. You try and run it all the way up high load, it's going to go and burn itself out. It gets hot. It's wasted.
Yeah.
Robert's question here: do you guys run? James, I know you have a gas generator, your big Honda that you use, right?
Yeah, I just run gasoline, an inverter generator.
Yeah, how many gallons would you go through during a storm if you're out for 2 or 3 days? I mean, you go through a lot of gas.
Oh God, I've never kept track. I want to say about 12 gallons in 24 hours with that.
That's not terrible.
No,
I've seen them daisy chain the cans, the gas cans and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the load you put on it, and it depends on the generator. I mean, that's another big advantage of the inverter is that the engine will run slow when you're not pulling full load, so it's going to be quieter. The engine's going to last longer. You're going to save on gas, save on noise. Of course, when the electric, when the board goes out, you're going to be paying for it then.
Right.
But this question here with the ethanol, keep in mind, ethanol gives you the majority of your octane when you're buying ethanol infused. So just by taking it out is not a good thing.
No.
Everybody I know that does that, and I've done it too, with a milk jug and you pop the hole in water and all that. But I have to put a bottle of octane booster in it because it'll knock like crazy.
Yeah.
I always run just pump gas in my stuff. Has ethanol in it. It's not an issue as long as you don't leave it in the tank for, for me, I leave it in there for up to 6 months and it's fine.
Someone said our 87 octane here, if you take the ethanol out, it's about 80 octane. So it's really not a good idea.
No, I stopped using gasoline after Hurricane Irene in 2011. I'm exclusively propane, but I do have the ability to run gasoline if I wanted to. I have a small suitcase generator that is on tri-fuel, gasoline, propane, natural gas, that runs all the little stuff, and that I run off a barbecue grill tank, easy small stuff. And then I have a Generac 7000 EXL that is also converted to tri-fuel. I have a 100-pound tank that has about 23.7 gallons of propane in there, and I only use that big honker for running the electric hot water heater, which is 5,500 watts constant duty. And you really...
How is that in the winter, though, Gare, when it's sub-zero?
You never lose power, though.
I don't lose power. For those that don't know, all of my utility... I used to live in a place where a squirrel as much as farted and you lost power for like 8 days. I'm not kidding. And now, after my wife and I got married, we moved into the house we're in now. All of our utilities underground. We have a substation that's about 1,000 feet away. So it would take like an EF2 tornado to even make the lights flicker. So it's most likely I'll never use it. But the time
here, if we lose power, it's an hour, 2, 3. It's not really,
it's not terrible, but I mean, it's always better to be prepared than not be. But that's the only time I use that big generator is for the electric hot water here. Everything else is small enough. I do have a battery bank and inverter setup on my transfer switch, so I have 2 large 29 DC boat batteries in parallel that runs a 1,500 watt pure sine wave power inverter that goes up to the transfer switch, and then I could run all the lights. I can run I can run TVs, stuff like that, and it's silent. If I'm not I got about 8 to 12 hours of battery backup, silent power that I can run overnight and not have any problems.
I saw a question too about is ethanol free available, and in my county, it's not.
Same here.
And unless you buy, the super expensive little can. But when you're talking a generator with a 7-gallon tank, you're not gonna
Yeah, you're
want
not
to
spending
pay.
$25 a gallon. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not gonna want to pay that kind of price. So, I mean, I always keep my generator. It's full of fuel, has ethanol in it.
Mhm.
I keep the carb dry, swap it out twice
That's
a year. Not a bit of rust, no problems.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. But it's like 17 years old, so
Yeah.
still doing well.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's good practice, right? You keep the carburetor dry, you keep the cap on. It's, you're I don't know if your garage is insulated at all, but if you're not
Yeah.
seeing any major temperature fluctuations, that also has a big effect on aging of the fuel too. If you leave your generator out in
Yes.
your shed,
Yep.
forget
Well,
it.
yeah. Well, look at my Harley that you drove, James. That fuel is 3.5 years old in that thing. I hadn't ridden that, and it was in a very humid garage. And
With ethanol?
yeah, and I don't know how the
Yeah.
hell it did. I didn't put any stabilizer or anything, and
Wow.
yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah. Let's see. Another question should be asked individually. What got you into generators, engines, electronics? Well, that's kind of a loaded question.
Look at Gary's back wall. There's some of it. Yeah.
I mean, you got. I mean, I've been a bass player for 20 years, but what got me into electronics? I mean, since I was a kid, since I was a baby, really. I mean,
Wait, you weren't one of those Heathkit, Popular Electronic Magazine, one of those kids, right?
I would get the little, building your own, build your own AM radio things, from the Scholastic Book Fair.
We had a Heathkit
I was that kid.
store down in Lafayette Plaza, Heathkit Electronics.
Yep.
They actually sold those kits in
Yep.
Bridgeport out of Lafayette Electronics store in Bridgeport. I'll never forget it. Any Heathkit.
Remember Lafayette?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I got involved with. I've always, liked electronics, but I mean, I never got a proper education for it. It was just, when I've always found like if you have a genuine passion for what you really love to do, then you're gonna figure out ways. You're gonna figure out how that electronic device works, and you may not know exactly everything that's going on in it, but if you get exposed to other people that are very educated in that field, then you tend to absorb that stuff like a sponge, especially if you have the passion for it. Generators really kind of kicked into high gear in 2011, I'll say, because of those hurricanes. I needed to learn on how to fix them in order to have power. And then, the repair, I've been doing small engine repair since I was a kid with my my father and my grandfather. But, it was only until recently, a couple years ago after I got married, that my wife said, like, well, you do it. Well, let's make a business out of it. Let's find a way to monetize it. So I credit her for doing that.
So if you run the Gen 24/7, it's still 25 hours the recommended, right?
Correct. Yes.
Some of it
You
has
really
to
shouldn't
do
be
too-
be running it that long. You cannot run something like an air-cooled engine 20.
Yeah.
At the most, like Westinghouse has recommended, Furman, and even Champion. They said anywhere from 8 to 12 hours.
How much rest time? How much rest?
About 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
So they don't, because you want it to go through.
So what do they say? Buy 2 generators then? So
yeah, exactly. So if you're going to leapfrog between them, so that's what burns these things up. You have to let them go through a heat cycle. The air cooled engines just naturally run hotter. You have to let them cool down, let them rest for a bit. Plus, you're burning all that fuel. I made the mistake of running a gasoline power generator during Hurricane Irene and during that wacky winter snowstorm in October up here in Connecticut, and I blew through almost over $200 in fuel, not realizing, hey, I could run the generator for an hour or two, let the refrigerators get cold, let the freezers get cold, run the furnace for a little while, warm up the house, that kind of thing, warm up the hot water, and then shut it down for a few hours because fuel is expensive. I had to be smarter about it. So if I ever find myself in that situation, which is likely never, I'll know better next time.
Yeah. Down in New Zealand, no ethanol. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That is good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna try. What was that company you said, Gary, with the conversions?
US Carb. I know Hugh down. He's one of the main engineers down over there. I've been trying to get him on a live. I don't know if he ever watches, but it's always a timing issue or anything. But I like that company because I've had good experience with them. But there's also Nash Fuel. There's a couple other ones too that have come up, but they seem to be. I like US Car because of the snorkel, just because you don't have some of these Venturis that have to go and they have to put peg extenders on the studs for the carburetor in order to fit it, and sometimes these open frame and generators you have to cut the frame in order to install them. What?
Yeah, I've never heard of that, but I will say the power stations that are out there, it's kind of a similar thing. They've bundled together a few different things, right? They've bundled together the inverter, the batteries, and the charger.
And they call it what, a load center, right? Does everything.
It does everything, which is nice. The problem is if one of those components fails, the whole thing's pretty much junk.
You can't replace them. You could probably replace the batteries, but the batteries need to be, properly disposed of. But a lot of these power stations that are being made in China overseas these days, they're, even if you can find a schematic, they are extremely difficult to repair if they fail.
They're convenient. Don't get me wrong, especially if you're not into all that. But if you know what you're doing, you probably want a separate battery charger, a separate battery bank, a separate inverter. Just keep it modular. Yep. And that way you can switch out the part that breaks, even if it's a completely different brand, and not worry about it.
This is probably going to polarize some people, but a lot of those power stations are susceptible to high THD. So you try to charge them off a generator, they may not work well, or they may actually fail. I like James's idea better of having a separate battery charger, a separate battery bank, a power inverter. Iota Engineering is a great company. They make DC to AC to DC converters or DC to DC converters. They take AC wall power 240, 120, and they run 12 volts or 24. You can series them for 24, 48, whatever you need. Parallel them for more amperage. I have a 12 volt 90 amp battery charger, but it's a multi-state, so you're not just dumping voltage and current into a battery indiscriminately. It actually knows to go through the cycle, and once the batteries are topped off, it goes to a float mode. Those are extremely robust for high total harmonic distortion. Those there's absolutely no problem on high THD generators using those because they don't care, because they're just going to rectify it anyway. All that control circuitry is insulated on the DC side. So if you need a good battery bank charger, go with Iota Engineering. Can't go wrong with them.
Yeah, that's interesting, Scott, too. I have, this is kind of a random thing, but I have actually a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive and a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk and the ribbon cable. And I wanted to read the data off the disk to get it onto more modern technology. I can't find any computers left that you can connect that floppy drive to. And they never made a USB version of a 5 1/4 inch floppy. So I'm like,
I may have one.
Really? You have an older, like a 286 or an XT or?
Because that's before parallel ATA.
I may have one. Yeah, I may have one.
Maybe 486. Yeah. Does it work?
Yeah.
I used to build all my computers. I was more into computers than engines.
Yeah.
I didn't fix my first engine probably until about 6 years ago.
I gotta look, but I think I may have one. Let me take a look. What's this one here?
Middle-aged white guys. I'm not middle-aged just yet. Getting glitter.
I'm definitely am.
This is past our bedtime.
Well, sure. I'm past middle age. I'm the oldest out of everybody. So.
Oh God.
Hell, I'll be 60 in another 6 weeks or something.
I just turned 50.
Yeah, I'm the old man. Well, 50 is the new 40, so it doesn't really.
Yeah, well, it doesn't feel like 40.
Oh wait,
You're
you
30?
get to look forward to your prostate exam.
Yeah, I haven't booked that yet.
I just booked my third one today. I'm not looking forward to it.
I've heard they're not as bad as they used to be.
Well, the first one I had, I woke up in between because they didn't use Propanol or whatever. They used a different drug, and it didn't work. Yeah. In
I got
fact,
a 10-minute warning here, guys.
what's ironic is there's a new doctor now because the doctor I had for the gastro or whatever retired. So the kid he's looking through my notes. He goes, "Ooh, you woke up during the first one." I go, "That's in the notes." He goes, "Oh yeah, from insurance and everything else." He goes, "I take it you didn't sue." I was like, "Sue?"
Was that an option? Can I still
Yeah, I know,
do it?
really, right? So no, but he said, we're going to give you the good juice, the Michael Jackson juice. So I said, okay, that's what we need.
Oh God, then you'll never wake up.
Oh my gosh. Well, no, that's what it is. Propanol. That's what he died on.
Yeah.
That's the white liquid they give you every time you go in there. What was this one here? Is there a way? Do you have anything on your channel, James, where they can get in touch with you on your community page? Or anything?
It's on the about page.
Okay.
You can get my email address, but it doesn't work on mobile devices. I think you have to be on a desktop or a laptop to see that option.
Yep. You can see my email here. Hold on. Ken Small Engines with an extra S. If you want, I could forward something to him. If you want to email me, I could forward it to James. Either way.
Yeah, it's no secret. I mean, I do put it in comments when people ask. It's so it's.
Yep. I remember cassette tape. My brother was TRS-80 using cassette drive. I remember.
Oh yeah, I had that.
Yep, back in the 70s.
Used to load the cassette tape and hit record to save your program, and hope you can get it back.
35, yeah, that is early. Usually it's 50 here. Let's see. Oh yeah, I remember my first PC, 1983.
Oh yeah, I always dreamed of retiring and running a BBS.
Well, yeah, but remember, Gary, we were talking here. Me and your mother graduated high school the same year. So, anyway, what else we got here?
Yeah, for those that are watching, I hope any of our Florida viewers, I hope you guys are doing okay down there. I know you got hit pretty hard with that.
It was a little smaller than they thought, though, wasn't it? Though, what was it? Keaton Bay, I think, was the majority of it.
A lot of flooding down there, though.
Yeah, yeah. But my friends in Tampa didn't get hit like they were supposed to. No. North of them, a little bit north, but it went into Georgia really fast. Yep. Yeah. I wonder if Robert got hit at all because he's in like Carrollton area where they used to make snapper lawnmowers. He's over there. Let's see.
It's all relative, I guess.
Young as you feel.
Let's see.
Actually, probably a banjo would have fit in very well.
Yeah, you were in the Sticks, right?
But we actually do a couple songs where my lead guitar player actually plays the mandolin. And
interesting.
So what are the two songs we did? It's from the Who, "Mama's Got a Squeeze Box."
Oh yeah, Daddy Never Sleeps at Night.
And yeah, Daddy Never Sleeps at Night. And then we do "Losing My Religion" from REM, which is I think we play that one really, really good.
Yeah, in the beginning.
Those 20 meg hard drives were expensive in the 80s.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember when they went to double density floppies. Like, woo.
Yeah, I remember loading games, disc 1 of 20.
Yeah.
And you get on like disc 20 of 20, and then you get an IO error. It's like an hour later, and you can't finish loading the program. It's like you just wasted an hour of your life.
To date myself, 1983, I was running VisiCalc to do spreadsheets, and then something came out called Lotus 123, and I was like,
"Oh yeah,
wow, I like this," And then DBase and all the other canned software.
Pascal.
Yeah, Pascal, PL2, APL, C++. Oh yeah, stuff. Let's see. One last question from Justin. What's in the works?
Do you have in the works?
What
projects
coming up?
Projects.
Well, you can just look.
You got a lot more stuff there than when I visited you, James. I tell you that.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah. So you're gonna see. What are you gonna see next? Actually, it's behind the trash barrel. That's gonna be next week's video, and then probably this stuff that's right here.
Are you doing anything with your son, James? I know you did that motorcycle and stuff like that, but anything with the kids?
Not recently. Although, yeah, not recently. You know, Sean, my oldest, he's the most interested in it.
Is he
But
the
he's
one that
inter-
drove the go-karts and all that? Or
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the most interested in it, but he's interested in a lot of things. He does a lot of electronics. He does a lot of Arduino. You know, he's still trying to figure out. He's actually in the robotics club. Very
I
smart
did
kid.
robotics stuff.
Yeah.
That must be a lot of fun for him.
Yeah,
does
and
he participate in any of the STEM activities they have?
I'm not.
'Cause I know
Yeah,
we
actually,
sponsor some STEM events. Yeah.
yeah. He was doing that. He's going into high school this year, but last year he was invited to some of the high school events regarding robotics and some of the technology stuff. So he's on the right track.
The next video I'm working on it was a bit of a head scratcher first. It's a Cub Cadet Zero Turn, but it's got a Bluetooth module. You can actually use the proprietary Cub Cadet app on your phone, and all it does is show you how many hours and when to do the maintenance scheduling. Everything that all the physical relays, the safety.
Wait, it's not like Cadillac where it'll call the dealer for you and arrange an appointment.
It's one step below that, let me tell you. So basically, the wiring harness is spaghetti, and the guy was having trouble, and he's a dart thrower. He was throwing parts at it, and this is I got a jet after this. But long story short, the project is I had to take apart the whole machine, look at all the different safety switches because there's normally closed, normally open. I had to test all the switches, make sure there's continuity between all the points, only to find that this Bluetooth module has taken place of a whole bunch of other relays and switches that would normally be found on a typical lawnmower. And this thing costs $240 new. And if it doesn't, because the blades won't turn on. He replaced the switch, and it worked for a bit, then it would be intermittent. And then I traced it back to this really overly expensive, overly complicated Bluetooth module. So yeah, it's like going to be fun.
Well, see, that's good though. You have the edge on repairs like that.
Well, the good thing too is that I did talk to Cub Cadet and Sharonda. If you're watching, Sharonda, thank you so much.
Probably out in Cleveland or where?
I'm assuming so, but I gave them the model and serial, and because you can't find the schematic with the Bluetooth module, I got it, and that's how I was able to figure it out that it was the Bluetooth module. Cool. Not the guy was not happy that he had to spend the money, but I'm hoping that should fix it because everything else seems to be working right.
All right, we're closing up on an hour and a half. I know, Gary, you said you wanted to cut.
Yeah, I got to chat. Yep.
Yeah, but
great to chat with everyone.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone coming. And tomorrow, whoever is into just the small engine crowd, our other group, all the guys from around the world, I'm going to be hosting that tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. That goes usually 2 to 4. And it's, mixed mowers and Bruce Pender and John Clem and all the wacky guys. We're all on there from 2 to 4 every Saturday. So if you want, my channel, same as here, join me tomorrow. I want to thank Gary, James, everybody for showing up. All the guys out in the chat, great questions. Actually, we had a lot of good questions tonight.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And, even though we sort of talk about some of the same stuff each week, it's usually a different person asking. So it was really good. But I'm going to say that's it for now. Let me end this thing, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.